Efficiency, quality, and sustainability. These are the hallmarks of our products. But who are we? Who are the people behind these products? And what makes us special? We are a team of more than 300 employees from 42 nations. Our mission is to make animal feed that is both high quality and efficient, so that you can realize the full performance potential of your livestock. Biochem was founded in Germany in 1986 and has continuously evolved into a global enterprise. We supply a wide range of top quality products. These include additives, premixes, and supplementary feeds from our own production. From powders and pastes to liquids, we support you with expert advice on how to increase the health and performance of your animals. And at the same time, we set the highest standards for ourselves. We conduct in-depth research and verify our feeding concepts through detailed analysis and routine field testing. In doing so, we work together with renowned independent institutes from all over the world. This is the best way to precisely offer you the feeding concepts you need. As animal nutritionists, veterinarians, chemists, and microbiologists, we understand the needs of every animal species, every production sector, and every climate zone. Our main focus is on feeding your animals sustainability according to their specific needs. That's why we actively pursue animal welfare and efficient nutrient utilization in the development of our products. From intestinal health and mycotoxin management to nutrient efficiency, antibiotic reduction, immune stimulation, and feed safety, we offer innovative feed solutions to keep your animals in perfect health. We see ourselves as global neighbours. We research, develop, and manufacture our products in Germany and are always available to support you on site in more than 70 countries. Biochem. Feed safety for food safety. Efficiency, quality, and sustainability. These are the hallmarks of our products. But who are we? Who are the people behind these products? And what makes us special? We are a team of more than 300 employees from 42 nations. Our mission is to make animal feed that is both high quality and efficient, so that you can realize the full performance potential of your livestock. Biochem was founded in Germany in 1986 and has continuously evolved into a global enterprise. We supply a wide range of top quality products. These include additives, premixes, and supplementary feeds from our own production. From powders and pastes to liquids, we support you with expert advice on how to increase the health and performance of your animals. And at the same time, we set the highest standards for ourselves. We conduct in-depth research and verify our feeding concepts through detailed analysis and routine field testing. In doing so, we work together with renowned independent institutes from all over the world. This is the best way to precisely offer you the feeding concepts you need. As animal nutritionists, veterinarians, chemists, and microbiologists, we understand the needs of every animal species, every production sector, and every climate zone. Our main focus is on feeding your animals sustainability according to their specific needs. That's why we actively pursue animal welfare and efficient nutrient utilization in the development of our products. From intestinal health and mycotoxin management to nutrient efficiency, antibiotic reduction, immune stimulation, and feed safety, we offer innovative feed solutions to keep your animals in perfect health. We see ourselves as global neighbours. We research, develop, and manufacture our products in Germany and are always available to support you on site in more than 70 countries. Biochem. Feed safety for food safety.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Perkenalkan, nama saya Dr. Hewan Gratis Miarsa. Saya adalah produk spesialis dari PT SAS Internasional. Mengucapkan selamat datang kepada Bapak Ibu sekalian. Terima kasih atas kehadirannya, walaupun kita tidak dapat bertatap muka secara langsung karena pandemi, namun masih dapat berjumpa via online pada hari ini pada acara webinar soft launching produk PT Biochem Zusatzstoffe Indonesia bekerjasama dengan PT SAS Internasional dengan topik Optimal Stress Management, Every Egg Counts, Strengthen Relaxation, Immunity, Egg Production, and Fertility. Dengan pembicara adalah Katharina Nordlohne sebagai Regional Technical Manager Biochem Asia Pasifik. Adapun agenda hari ini adalah sebagai berikut. Opening speech by Mr. Mark Luke, presentation by Katharina Nordlohne, and summary by Ibu Kristiana Rini Astuti, discussion lead by Ibu Kristiana Rini Astuti, dan terakhir adalah penutup. Untuk mempersingkat waktu, acara akan segera dibuka oleh Mr. Mark Luke as Sales Director Biochem Asia Pacific. Mr. Mark Luke, I hand over the time for you to opening the webinar.
Okay, thank you very much for this very nice introduction, and hello to all. I would like to welcome you to the first webinar of Biochem here on the virtual ILDEX in Indonesia. On behalf of Biochem, I would like to welcome you all to participate as well in the first virtual ILDEX, and Biochem is also participating the first time there. It's also an experience for us under these difficult times on not traveling, but at least we are happy to having this platform in order to keep the contact to you, to our customers. But nevertheless, I hope that we can meeting from face to face as soon as possible if the traveling allows it. Anyway, I would like that you enjoy the webinar with this optimal stress management. I think every egg counts, even under these difficult times with high raw material prices. Efficiency on animal production becomes even more important. And I think also Biochem can provide several of solutions. And one of these is with the stress management, egg production, and fertility in poultry. Thank you very much. Enjoy the session with Katharina. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mark Luke, for the opening speech. Selanjutnya, kita menuju ke acara inti, yaitu akan ada presentasi mengenai optimal stress management, every egg counts, strength relaxation, immunity, egg production, and fertility oleh Katharina Nordlohne as Regional Technical Manager Biochem Asia Pacific. Bagi Bapak Ibu yang ada pertanyaan, nanti silahkan ditulis pada kolom chat dan akan kita bahas pada acara diskusi dengan menulis nama dan pertanyaan yang ditujukan. Sebelumnya saya akan bacakan CV singkat dari Katharina Nordlohne. Beliau mendapatkan gelar Bachelor of Science dan Master of Science in Agriculture Science dari University of Göttingen. Berpengalaman di berbagai konferensi internasional dan saat ini menjabat sebagai Technical Manager Asia Pacific di Biochem. Oke, Katharina, I hand over the time to you to start your presentation.
Hello, everybody. This is Katharina from Biochem. and a very warm welcome to everybody who's joining our today's session about optimal stress management, because every egg counts and every bird counts, and that's why we are looking into solutions on, of course, helping our flock to better deal with different stress situations. And while stress is actually something we are discussing more or less daily with our consultants and advisors and our teams, it matters a lot on what kind of stress we are looking into and on also the products and tools that we are using. And today we want to emphasize tools that focus on relaxation and also boosting immunity and itself the egg production and fertility parameters. To do so, we will first look into a few poultry-specific stressors and give you a more clear idea on what is the differences on different stressors. I will then introduce a product that is so-called Stress Pack that we are also about to launch now in Indonesia, that is really targeting relaxation in our flocks, in the birds. Then we'll also talk about the importance of vitamins for egg production, for fertility in more detail. And I'll also give you an idea on a product that is also very targeted, focusing on the vitamin supply to enhance immunity and fertility in our flocks. And then, of course, we have some take-home messages from today's session about optimal stress management and what you should take into consideration when you're looking into product and tool choices. So let's look into a few poultry-specific acute stressors, as we like to say. There could be, of course, the so-called feather packing that is pretty stressful for birds. That means, of course, a lot of fighting also going on in the flock. Another very tremendous stressor that we have out there is the beak trimming. And of course, also the handling, all kinds of handlings, transport, depending, of course, also on how you do it. But no matter how you do it, it'll always put a big burden and strain on the birds and is stressing them. And last but not least, of course, also certain types of vaccinations. Here, I picked a picture of a vaccination that is rather severe in its type. And all these kind of stressors and acute stressors management procedures that we have are causing so-called fight and flight reactions. And maybe some of you have heard about it. And I think all of us know that from our own and personal lives, is that when we get into a very acute stress situation, we tend to have certain body reactions that we cannot control and do anything about. Basically, it's, for example, the increase in blood pressure and glucose level. We are feeling that our heart rate is accelerating, that our muscle activity is accelerating. We notice that our whole body consumption, the energy consumption of our body is going up because we are mobilizing fat, and we are also increasing the respiration rate just to be ready to react to whatever situation it is. And another thing that we also typically notice in our own bodies, and the same happens to our animals, is that the digestion function and the immune function are impaired. This has very many reasons that are related to the hormonal axis in our bodies. And this is also rather complex, so we're not going into more detail about it. But there's a lot of hormones that are excreted in such situations that are releasing also a lot of cortisol and other stress factors. And another interesting thing that we know in this context is that especially the combination of thermal stress, so let's say heat stress, heat waves, in combination with fear, so with all these kind of examples that I just showed you, the combination of both is the most tremendous stressor. So if it comes together, as we can imagine, if we have several different stresses coming together, it's actually the most severe situation and causes the most severe economic impact in our flocks. Interestingly, when we look into stress and compare stresses with each other, we will notice that there is a lot of differences in the type of stresses that we look into. In general, we will differentiate between so-called mild stressors, severe stressors, and also subclinical stressors. Generally, the body of the animal's metabolism is capable to deal with a certain amount of mild stress. So a slight increase in temperature above its optimal temperature feeling, or certain rather not that invasive stresses, let's say a water vaccination, for example. All that is rather mild stressors, and in general the animals are more or less well able to deal with such stresses because they have reserves, they have glycogen reserves, which they can also fulfill or replenish again very easily. And because of that, many times we do not necessarily see very obvious biological symptoms and losses in the end. Severe stressors is a different thing. For severe stressors and the beak trimming, for example, the handling, all that is normally very severe stresses. We see directly effects on the biological performance because they are so severe that the body reserves cannot deal with it. And because of that, the body needs to shift its energy away from growth towards dealing with this situation. And because of that, also we see a longer recovery process. And then there is the combination, you could say, or what we call, say, subclinical stressors. So maybe you have a first stressor that you do not see necessarily any biological impacts, but then that could be, for example, mycotoxins in your diet. But then another stressor comes in that is actually not that severe, but it already causes biological performance losses because you already have a you could say underlying stress that is consuming all that already body reserves. So something that we also want to look into, especially with our product Stress Pack, is these severe stressors. And it's very important to notice that because stress is not equal to stress, it's important to really look into what kind of product you choose and if it's really designed at the problems that you're looking into. Let's look at a few more examples in a few more detail. I mentioned already stressful vaccinations. There's quite many stressful vaccinations that we are doing, mainly, of course, in the pullet stage, in the rearing stage. So eye drop, subcutaneous or intramuscular injections, wing web, or cloacal vaccinations are examples for these. They all require handling, and they all more or less or very often also applicate vaccines that are live vaccines that are also even more stressful for the body than attenuated ones. We know, and I'm sure very many of you have seen that throughout your experience, is that stressful vaccinations often result in so-called severe post-vaccination reactions. This can be poor body weight gains, poor uniformities, high feed conversion ratios. You might also see coughing after the vaccinations, fever, temperature increase, or just the lethargy that is in your flock. And sometimes these symptoms last for up to 7 days, so for an entire week. And that we know, of course, costs a lot of performance, especially in the pullet stage, where we know is very important to stay on the line, on the performance line, to really also ensure later on a good egg production. Oftentimes, these severe post-vaccination reactions are followed by antibiotic treatments, and one way or the other, they always result in financial losses. And Stress Pack is one tool that you could use to alleviate these severe post-vaccination reactions, and also because of that, maybe reduce or prevent the use of antibiotics. Another example from the pullet and the rearing phase is definitely the beak trimming. It's one of the most invasive things we're doing to the birds in this stage. We're sometimes even repeating it. So we're doing it very early in the first 1 or 2 weeks of life, and then we are repeating it later on many times. And of course, it matters on how you do the procedure, how well trained is your staff, on what kind of techniques you are using. But no matter what you do, it's a very stressful event for the birds. And especially if it's not done correctly, you may see reduced ability to eat and drink later on. And you may even, because of that, have a long-term stressor for the birds. And you'll also maybe have problems with the reduced social status. So it has very many consequences on the bird's life. Let's come a bit more on stressors that affect egg production. When we say that stressors affect egg production or fertility, also in the breeders, we many times first thing look at values like hen day production or hatchability, fertility, these kind of things. But another thing that can also be impaired is, for example, egg shell quality or egg quality. What we know is that the nature, the time, and the severity of the stress stimulus matters a lot in the type of symptoms or effects, negative impacts that we see in the end. Here's a few examples. So we see that, for example, body checked or misshapen shells is something that we normally see when a stressor occurs rather during early egg formation. Why is that? Because this, let's say, fight and flight reaction that maybe happens in this early egg formation process results in a squeezing of the shell gland. And because of this contraction throughout this initial fright, we are having a faster process of the processing or traveling of the egg through the gland. And because of that, we do not have a very homogeneous eggshell formation. Stress can be a reason, incorrect lighting, overcrowding. As always, it's many times multifactorial, but we know that stressor can additionally result in these kind of symptoms. Another symptom of stress possibly can be calcium-coated eggs. So for example, if you have these problems, this is rather something we attribute to stress during the later egg formation process. Why is that? Because generally when the eggshell is already formed, the calcium excretion occurs rather during later stages, and a stressor can result in a very inhomogeneous excretion of the calcium. So that could be a reason why we have this kind of problem. And this is just to show you that, as I said, nature, time, and severity of the stimulus can matter in what kind of effects I see. Another example from the production phase can be when we look at breeders, in particular now, the removing males. So basically something that we should be constantly doing, but sometimes it still happens that we are replacing older cockerels at a rather high percentage, let's say often around 40% is exchanged at once. And this is because of the social status and all the social things going on and the exchange, taking them out of the flock. This is also a very severe stressor for a lot of birds, and that can result in negative performance effects on the females, exactly what we do not want. Of course, we can recommend to have a continuous removal here instead of a very sudden removal. But nevertheless, again, as soon as you go into your flocks, as soon as you handle them, as soon as you do something, there will be a stressor. And if you have problems with that, it might be reasonable to consider a product that is also having this relaxation effect. A few other examples during egg production, of course, lightning can always be a problem. If you have parenteral booster vaccinations, heat stress, or uneven feed distribution, all that can be stress triggers during production. All of those stress factors in the end have in common that they cause economic losses in laying hens and breeders. Mortality is, of course, the one that you see very clearly, but it can also be losses in production performance. So no matter if it's egg production, hatchability, or if it's feed conversion ratio, stress can have very different impacts on the birds. And another thing, of course, is always also eggshell quality. We just saw a few examples of that. We also know that if this mineralization and of the egg is not going well throughout the shell gland, we will also have problems with that, and that can of course reduce our hatchability in the end. Stress pack is a product that I just want to also shortly introduce to you here, because it's, I think, very unique in comparison to other stress products that you may have encountered in your professional careers. So basically what we know is that stress pack SL is a combination of 4 major ingredients. It's a vitamin C, which is very well known to be having a stress relieving effect. We have the tryptophan as a very important amino acid, the magnesium, and the betaine. There's 2 that I want to look into a bit more detail today. and that's the tryptophan and magnesium, because I think those are the most outstanding ingredients in our product Stress Pack SL. So basically, let's look into magnesium first. I think you might already know also, and I think I myself have that a lot. If I have cramps, for example, magnesium is something my doctor also tells me to take, because it has a relaxing effect, and it's cramps, for example, are many times, really linked to a lack of magnesium. So we know that magnesium is a very important cofactor. It's an enzyme activator for very many processes in the body. And the most important one also is that it also reduces these excitability, because it has this function of also reducing this, for example, calcium-induced excitability of the junctions. It also reduces noradrenaline and adrenaline, and it also reduces the symptoms of the fight and flight reaction. So basically, and that's what I pointed out in the beginning, if we have those severe stressors and we have these fight and flight reactions, magnesium is a very good tool to alleviate these kind of effects. Something that is also important for Stress Pack is that we are using organic magnesium in our product. This is important because, of course, especially throughout stressing periods, the absorption of a lot of nutrients is impaired, and the organic minerals have a lot of advantages here in the absorption and in the efficacy in the animal. So that's the reason why we are using organic chelated magnesium in our product. And a few words about tryptophan. Tryptophan itself, of course, we know is an important amino acid. It's also especially important because it's a precursor of the serotonin. Serotonin is known as the so-called happiness hormone and the happiness effect, because that's also something we again know from ourselves, is that when we eat chocolate or certain things that make us happy, we have an increased serotonin excretion. So this is also contributing to the relaxation effect. It helps our animals to feel better in a very, right way that you can say it works like that. Let's look at a bit data, because Stress Pack is also a product that we have had in our portfolio for a long time, and we have we're lucky to also have a few data on this kind of product. And here we have a trial that was done in laying hens. And basically what they did is they applied the product after transport. So they transported the pullets to the production house, to the layer house, and they applied a Stress Pack directly after arrival and our recommended dosage. And they took blood samples and fecal samples to analyze the heterocyte to lymphocyte ratio, but also the corticosterone level. And something we can see here is that in the control group, we have a significantly increased corticosterone level in comparison to the Stress Pack group. So we were really able to have less stress hormone excretion with the Stress Pack application. We also see that it has this impact on the HL ratio. And again, this was also a significant reduction in the HL ratio, which is a good sign, or it's a good and very good measurable indicator for the for the stress level of the birds. So we could see that Stress Pack directly affected these parameters. Another thing that, of course, always comes up when we talk about stress in Southeast Asia is, of course, heat stress. Generally, what we like to say is that, of course, generally we live in a very hot climate, different to us in Germany. But we know, of course, that something that is also that you are traveling with even more is not only the temperature, but also what we call the heat extremes, the so-called heat waves, which is more and more coming, maybe also due to climate change. And we see, of course, that we have much more tropical storms, cyclones, typhoons, these kind of things. And we know that in our poultry flocks, during these periods of storms, but also really extreme heat waves, we see that mortality goes up and that we have much more problems with the production than in standard times. Here's an example, even though it's from Germany, but I think it really nicely shows the direct impact of temperature and the temperature humidity index on performance. And we see that exactly when we have these, really high temperatures and humidity scores, we also directly see peaks in daily mortality, and we see a decrease in laying hen performance, so in the egg production. Here's a trial where we basically applied stress pack during heat stress. The heat stress periods in this trial were the days 37 to 39 and 50 to 51. In these periods, the temperature increased to, I think it was more than 45 or around 45 degrees Celsius. So there's really high temperatures for the birds to deal with. And you can see that in the trial group, so the group that received stress pack, in these periods, in these heat stress periods, we have much lower mortality levels than in the control groups, which is again a very strong indicator that the product, if you apply it during these stress periods, really helps to deal with the consequences. If we look a bit into stress factors and then the applications and indications for the product, there's quite many application options that you have. I think one that is always makes sense is to provide the product after very severe vaccinations, but also after other very severe handling and management procedures, like the beak trimming, like the catching, all these kind of things. For the dosage, generally, we recommend the product with a dosage of 1 to 1.5 kilogram per 1,000 liter drinking water. I think the most standardized dosage that is, or most commonly used dosage is the 1 kilogram. If you are interested to learn more about the product, the dosing, the application, we have videos, and we also have a dosing calculator that you can of course, are free to visit and check out if it's maybe useful for you. In the second part of the presentation, I would like to also shortly look into the importance of vitamins for egg production. Vitamins, as we all know, are essential for life. They are essential for vitality and production. We have so-called minimum requirements that we need to make, that we have to, that the birds can survive and live at all. We have an optimal supply level, and we know that there's a so-called additional effects. And here's some examples for such additional effects for the vitamins A, D3, and E. We know that vitamin A, for example, if you supply it in levels higher than the optimal supply, you have positive effects on fertility and on immunity. For the vitamin D3, definitely also on immunity, and for the vitamin E, also on immunity, health, quality of meat or milk and egg. If we look at negative effects related to vitamin deficiencies, we know that especially, again, the vitamin A, D3, and E are the most important ones. You can see here that, of course, different vitamins are more important in certain phases, but you can see that these are the three most important vitamins that we have if we look into egg production, if we look into hatchability and immunity in general. The question could be, of course, why should I supplement additional vitamins if I already have something in my premix, and why would I have increased requirements? One, of course, general reason why we have or can have increased vitamin requirements is heat stress. But there's quite many others. So for example, if you have mycotoxin contamination, this is also impairing nutrient and vitamin utilization. Or if you are having certain types of rancid oils or high PUFAs, which means also is triggering not so good vitamin utilization in the animals. Also other examples, parasites, other diseases, sulfonamides, all this kind of things are examples for increased requirements of vitamins in our birds. But there's also, even if you might say that you have enough vitamins maybe in your diets, there might still be reasons why this is not sufficient to deal and to cover the demand of your animals. So one thing, of course, is the variability in the raw feed ingredients. Another thing is the processing and storing. the longer you store it and the way you store it and process it, you will also lose vitamins, even if you added some with a premix. We have also the tendency to have the so-called least cost formulation, especially now as the raw material prices are very high. This is also a very important triggering factor that may have us reduce the premix amount, reduce the vitamin inclusion. Then is another thing that we know is definitely the reduced feed intake, for example, due to stress, diseases, or maybe also because we have a rather high energy content in our diets. This can reduce the feed intake. But at the same time, if we reduce the feed intake, we also have lower vitamin uptake with the animals. And another reason, of course, improved feed conversion ratio also triggers this lower feed intake or the lower utilization of vitamins. Here's a few recommendations that are out there for laying hens. Generally, I think what we see in diets is that a lot of diets out there, the commercial diets, do not have that much vitamins inside. There is some, but not necessarily all. And I think everybody can, of course, check that for themselves. And there's, as I mentioned, a few different reasons for that. Very interesting, if we look at it, is that for certain situations, for example, for a enhanced immunity function, or also during heat stress, we have even increased recommendations for, especially in this case, vitamin E. So here there can be recommendation levels of up to 100 milligram of vitamin E, or 150 in breeders, or even up to 200 milligram under heat stress conditions. And this again contributes or links to the additional effect that I mentioned earlier, is that under certain conditions, and you want maybe to contribute and add additional vitamins to have these additional effects. Here's an example of a few premixes that are from Indonesia with their standard dosage, and just checking on, comparing on what they contribute to your diets. And I think for all of them, you can see that they, some more, some less, but they rather all stay a bit below those recommended levels. Some even stay below those very far, especially for the vitamin E, as you can see here, with levels of just 10 milligram per kilogram feed. So this is actually something we should worry about, because we know, and we saw that earlier, that vitamin E is very important. Another thing definitely is that I mentioned before that we have the supranutritional vitamin levels. So this was a study that also related to testing supranutritional vitamin levels, which means we are adding more vitamins than is even recommended. And this was a trial where they had already 10,000 international units of vitamin A in the standard diet, and also a good level of vitamin E with 37 milligram per kilogram diet. But nevertheless, they had very many treatments where they increased those vitamin A and E levels to an even higher level, just to see if these additional effects can be even boosted more. And very interestingly, they saw that, especially in this case, vitamin E again, was very important in increasing and extending the hand's productivity for an additional 6 weeks, utilizing them. And it also helped them to prevent a strong decline in the fertility in older breeders. So it's very important to consider also additional vitamins for longer productivity in our flocks. Towards the end, just a few words on the Liquid Strong. Liquid Strong is a very highly concentrated vitamin product containing the 3 so important vitamins, vitamin A, D3, and E. All of them for their reasons of especially immunity, but also fertility. If we look at the positioning, so when would we rather recommend to use a product like Liquid Strong? Definitely where we know where we have a very high demand is from the onset of lay to the peak of lay. Here we would recommend to use a product like Liquid Strong for 2 days per week at our standard recommended dosage. This has positive effects on egg production, maturation, early fertility, and also later on the breeding success. Another thing that you could consider, because we have really high concentrations of vitamins in our product Liquid Strong, is to have a more or less continuous supply to maybe balance lacking vitamins in your diet. So if you have the problem that you may not have enough vitamins in your diets with premix, you can also consider to use your product at lower dosages. At how much, this is, of course, we are happy to help you find out what would be the right dosage for you. And again, the note on the dosage link. So summing up the advantages, again, for the Liquid With Strong is that we have a very targeted and high vitamin supply. We have these effects on sexual maturation and fertility. We know that we have a strong boosting of the immunity with this product. And also the vitamin D3 that is inside the product can help us with calcium phosphorus metabolism. So take-home messages, and that's already our end of this session. Basically, very important to always remember is that stress is not equals to stress. And because of that, it's very important to choose the right product for the type of stressors that you are dealing with. Stress Pack, for example, is a product that is very good here for this relaxation effect, also for the hydration effect in the animal. Liquid With Strong is rather a product that you use for immunity and fertility boost. And in the end, of course, something that I always like to emphasize is that stressors also in the pullet rearing are very important for later egg production. And that's why pullet rearing, even though we all don't really want to spend a lot of money on it, is a also very crucial phase. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to hear your questions, and I'm ready here for your discussion.
Karina, for your presentation, and we will summarize your presentation in Bahasa by Mrs. Rini, and she will lead the Q&A session. Silahkan kepada Ibu Rini.
Terima kasih Pak Gratus atas waktunya. Dari presentasi Katarina hari ini, boleh saya sampaikan beberapa hal, yaitu untuk pertama, stres itu ada banyak macam, baik dari mulai yang lemah, kemudian yang subklinis, dan juga yang parah, seperti misalnya setelah vaksinasi, kemudian adanya potong paruh, replacement, dan stres selama produksi, baik itu karena pencahayaan atau hal yang lain. Selama stres tersebut akan menyebabkan terjadinya penurunan produksi dan kerugian, terutama bagi peternak, karena adanya perubahan pada kualitas kerabang telur, tadi ada perubahan bentuk, dan juga seperti ada lapisan kalsium pada cangkang telur. Biochem di sini menyediakan produk yang dapat digunakan pada saat kondisi stres, terutama pada saat stres parah, yaitu dengan nama produk Stress Pack SL, yang mengandung vitamin C, kemudian L-tryptophan, magnesium, dan betain. Vitamin C sendiri berfungsi untuk rilis dan menurunkan kortisol, kemudian juga berfungsi sebagai antioksidan. L-tryptophan itu untuk efek serotonin, yaitu hormon untuk happiness, dan juga mengandung magnesium, di mana magnesium yang terkandung di Stress Pack SL adalah magnesium organik, sehingga bioavailabilitasnya bagus dan mudah diserap. Magnesium ini akan mengurangi rangsangan, kemudian juga merilis adrenalin, dan juga memberikan efek yang menenangkan. Di samping itu, ada kandungan betain yang akan menjaga fungsi usus. Dari hasil presentasi tadi ditunjukkan trial di layar di mana pemberian Stress Pack SL dapat menurunkan kadar metabolit kortikosteron. Dan untuk di negara tropis seperti Indonesia, itu di mana kondisi cuacanya sangat panas dan ekstrim, pemberian Stress Pack SL dapat membantu untuk menurunkan kematian, terutama pada saat kondisi distress. Dosis Stress Pack SL yaitu 1 sampai 1,5 kilo per 1.000 liter. Selain untuk menangani stres, yang penting adalah kita juga untuk menjaga produksi telur dan pentingnya asupan vitamin sehingga produktivitas yang bisa terjaga. Pada kondisi khusus seperti misalnya adanya mikotoksin, peningkatan pufa, kemudian adanya heat stress, penyakit, parasit, sulfonamid, dan variasi bahan baku, kemudian adanya proses pemrosesan pakan, penyimpanan, penurunan feed intake, perbaikan FCR juga akan meningkatkan kebutuhan vitamin. Di sini Biochem memperkenalkan produk Liquid Strong yang mengandung vitamin A, D3, dan vitamin E. Vitamin A sendiri berfungsi untuk fertilitas dan imunitas. Vitamin D3 untuk support kekuatan tulang dan imunitas. Sedangkan vitamin E untuk antioksidan. Dosis yang diberikan adalah 0,1% dengan lama pemberian 2 hari per minggu. Dari presentasi Katarina yang dapat disampaikan adalah pertama, kita harus mengetahui jenis atau macam stres yang ada di lapangan. Kemudian kedua, pilih produk yang sesuai dengan kondisi yang ada di farm kita. Yaitu diantaranya satu, Stress Pack SL untuk efek relaksasi pada saat stres parah. Kemudian yang kedua, Liquid Strong itu untuk membantu imunitas dan fertilitas, serta membantu metabolisme kalsium dan vitamin D untuk kesehatan tulang. Serta perlu diingat adalah adanya stresor pada saat masa pulet. Mungkin itu summary dari Katarina hari ini. Selanjutnya kita akan lanjutkan dengan pertanyaan, mungkin bisa kita lihat di sini. Katarina, maybe we can continue to discuss with question from participant. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. First question from Pak Beni MDPS. Do you think the birds are still in need of magnesium if we use corn, soy, rice, bran in the feed?
Yeah. So basically, of course, when we're looking at the positioning of a product like Stress Pack, which contains magnesium, it's important to look at when are we using and recommending the product. And it's good if you have a diet that is rich in magnesium, definitely. But what we know is that very seldomly organic magnesium is supplemented in diets, which is a big difference to our Stress Pack. And we know that with the positioning of Stress Pack during stress situations, we have not only often in those situations a decreased feed intake, but also a decreased nutrient utilization. Plus, of course, we know that the inorganic sources of magnesium inside the feeds, magnesium oxide or whatever it is not as available as the organic sources. So basically, it's good to think about your magnesium content in your diets, but it doesn't have anything to do with the positioning of Stress Pack for additional application during stress situation.
So I think we should use Stress Pack in some situation, yeah, like in a severe stress or other time, and not replace magnesium in the diet, right?
Yeah, that's how we normally position the product. We have customers also using it inside their formulations, but something we always need to keep in mind is that during such acute stressors for which Stress Pack is designed, feed intake goes down. And even if we have a Stress Pack inside the feed, it's not helping us in the animal in those situations. That's why the application via water is much more targeted in the moment when you need it.
Oke, thank you. Pak Beni, mungkin itu jawabannya. Jadi untuk posisinya sendiri tidak mereplace magnesium, tapi bisa ditambahkan pada saat kondisi tertentu, misalnya pada saat stres, kemudian juga mengingat Stress Pack SL ini adalah konsumsinya lewat air minum, sehingga lebih mudah diserap. Okay, and then we can go to the next question from Nur Arifin. In stress you sound mild, severe, and subclinical. Could you please give me more details that we can see at poultry? For example, in mild stress, we have the decline or incline of water intake. What about the severe and subclinical? Maybe it's symptom, how to know, or parameter, how to know that the chicken has subclinical or severe stress. Yeah.
Actually, when you notice that the water intake goes down, I would personally say that's already a rather severe stressor, because having water intake going down always has a direct impact on performance, and that would be something that we would attribute to be a severe stressor. So when I said about mild stressors, is normally that we do not see any performance impacts in the end, so should not have a severe impact on water intake, feed intake, or other things, or at least very short, or so that you actually do not really notice impacts on performance. Any kind of what you maybe think about is maybe you see mild stressors, and that I think is a good example for subclinical stress. So you maybe notice it with a actually rather mild stressor, maybe water vaccination or other things, and the animals already react rather tough on it, so rather severe. That normally indicates that there might be already an underlying stressor that you may have not even noticed. Could be, for example, mycotoxins consuming glycogen reserves already in the animal. And that's why for such second mild stressor, you see already rather severe symptoms. So yeah, my answer on that would be to really then, if you have such rather mild stressors and you already see impacts on performance, really have a check and look into what could be another underlying stressor that you may haven't thought about.
Okay, so for the severe stress, water intake decline is already a severe stress, is it right?
Yeah, I
Not
mean, it
on-
depends
yeah.
a bit on how long it declines and on how strong it declines. But normally what we see first before water intake declines is that feed intake declines, and then later on water. So for me, that sounds already like something rather severe going on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, Bu Nur Arifis, for mild stress, I think maybe not see clearly, but if you are already facing with the feed intake decrease and water intake decrease is already severe stress. Okay, maybe there is any question? And Katarina, how about the solubility of stress pack SL?
We have tested this, of course, because it's a powder product. It's a question that is makes sense to ask and that we need to look into. Generally, we have a very good solubility for our powder products, so we can easily use it with up to 10% in a stock solution tank without having any problems. And this is already, I think, much higher than anybody would normally in standard applications where we see not even reaching such high inclusion levels in the stock solution tank. So normally this is not a problem at all.
It's no problem. Right, thank you. And how about the PS range for liquid strong? Because in Indonesia there is many variation of PS range quality water.
Okay, sorry.
PS, yeah. How about the PS range of water quality to use liquid strong? Is it acid or base or neutral?
pH?
Yeah.
The recommendation for it?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it safe for we use in how many range of pH we can use liquid strong?
You can use it. What we should worry about, or not worry about, but have an eye on is definitely too acid water, because we know that if you have very acid water, you can of course have a deterioration of all kinds of vitamins. That's a problem that you will also face for all other kind of liquid vitamin products. So generally you should consider to definitely spare certain acidifications, acidifier use inside the water at the same time as you use liquid strong, but else than that, it's no problem in combination. Okay,
so it means that we should take out the acidifier when we use a liquid strong. Yeah. Okay, and I see there is a question from Nur Arifin. How do we measure corticosterone level? The normal level for heterophil and lymphocyte.
Okay, actually there's it's an interesting question also, because there is quite many research on that, and it's not yet totally agreed on what is really the best method to measure it, because there's of course the option to measure it in blood. But of course, if you do that, you have a handling of the animals, and that also leads to a direct increase in a corticosterone level. And that's why a lot of times it's rather referred to measuring it in the feces. Of course, there you have a delay in taking samples. That's not such a direct effect that you could measure. So that's a lot about also what is maybe practical. I think in the trial that we also had here, they also took fecal samples. What we know is that the levels of corticosterone after an acute stressor normally increase the most within 30 to 60 minutes after the stressor. Of course, again, that depends a bit on the type of stressor and how long the stressor lasts, but that's normally what we can observe. So it makes sense to also wait for a moment if you would consider to take blood samples. For fecal samples, of course, also wait a bit longer to really measure it there. For the for the level of heterophiles and lymphocytes, also I've read a lot about that. Depends sometimes on the analysis methods that are used. Generally, what is confirmed is definitely that this is rather flock specific, because it depends a bit on your general health status inside the flock. And what we know is, of course, that the heterophiles during stress increase and the lymphocytes rather decrease. So if you want to measure that, what makes sense is to really have evaluation on your own flock to see on what level we have, and then compare it after stressor.
Okay, thank you. Maybe this is one last question from Pak Adil Kurasi. You consider magnesium, but what about phosphor? Sorry. What about phosphor? Is there any rule for phosphor in stress?
Well, generally what we know, of course, the design of the product, StressPack SL, is really focusing in a relaxing effect. And that has nothing to do with phosphorus. What we generally know is that during stresses, all kinds of minerals have a availability problem, and they all also play a role. But for the design of the product StressPack, it definitely makes most sense to really focus at a product like magnesium and not so much at phosphorus, because we want to have a relaxation of the muscles, of the overall excitement in the birds, and there magnesium is much more important than phosphorus.
Okay, thank you. Katarina, I think because there is a short time that we have now, maybe we can continue the question from audience in the next discussion room. Yeah, we can continue. Ya, terima kasih Bapak Ibu sekalian. Mungkin karena waktu sempit, nanti kita bisa diskusikan di acara berikutnya, di acara diskusi room, dan sekarang waktu kami kembalikan ke Pak Gratus.
Baik, terima kasih kepada Bu Rini dan Katarina. Sebagai informasi bagi peserta webinar akan mendapatkan goodie bag dari Biochem. Silakan untuk konfirmasi kehadiran ke nomor Ibu Rini, atau silakan untuk mengunjungi booth dari Biochem, dan di sana ada kontak us. Kemudian jangan lupa untuk mengikuti foto, mengupload ke Instagram, dan tag account @biochem_Indonesia. Akan ada hadiah menarik bagi pengunjung yang beruntung. Demikian acara presentasi hari ini. Bagi Bapak Ibu yang masih punya banyak pertanyaan, jangan khawatir. Selanjutnya kita akan ada acara diskusi di discussion room jam 16 sampai 16.45. Silakan Bapak Ibu men-scan di Scan Me pada poster berikut, dan nanti akan langsung menuju link Google Meet. Baik, terima kasih banyak Bapak Ibu atas partisipasi Bapak Ibu sekalian, dan sampai jumpa di discussion room PT Biochem Zusatzstoffe Indonesia. Sampai jumpa, salam sehat, dan jangan lupa untuk selalu mentaati protokol kesehatan. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua.
Efficiency, quality, and sustainability. These are the hallmarks of our products. But who are we? Who are the people behind these products? And what makes us special? We are a team of more than 300 employees from 42 nations. Our mission is to make animal feed that is both high quality and efficient, so that you can realize the full performance potential of your livestock. Biochem was founded in Germany in 1986 and has continuously evolved into a global enterprise. We supply a wide range of top quality products. These include additives, premixes, and supplementary feeds from our own production. From powders and pastes to liquids, we support you with expert advice on how to increase the health and performance of your animals. And at the same time, we set the highest standards for ourselves. We conduct in-depth research and verify our feeding concepts through detailed analysis and routine field testing. In doing so, we work together with renowned independent institutes from all over the world. This is the best way to precisely offer you the feeding concepts you need. As animal nutritionists, veterinarians, chemists, and microbiologists, we understand the needs of every animal species, every production sector, and every climate zone. Our main focus is on feeding your animals sustainability according to their specific needs. That's why we actively pursue animal welfare and efficient nutrient utilization in the development of our products. From intestinal health and mycotoxin management to nutrient efficiency, antibiotic reduction, immune stimulation, and feed safety, we offer innovative feed solutions to keep your animals in perfect health. We see ourselves as global neighbours. We research, develop, and manufacture our products in Germany and are always available to support you on site in more than 70 countries. Biochem. Feed